Without further ado, Mr. Keith Kawahata, VP of Studio Operations for Kabam.
All right. So thank you, Scott. Thank you. I've got the obligatory sort of introduction slides, so I'll go through those as quickly as possible. So like you said, I'm Vice President at Kabam Studios. I'm in charge of the revenue group as well as the RPG genre studio. I've got over 5 years of direct free-to-play experience as well. Who is Kabam? What do we do? So Kabam we are a top 10 mobile gaming company by revenue. Our games are available across 16 languages and played in 150 countries. We have #1 grossing iOS application last year in 2012. And we have the #1 top grossing iOS game in over 50 countries. And currently, we've also got 2 games in the top 10 iOS monthly grossing. More about who we are. We did a little over $180 million in gross revenues in 2012. We're experiencing phenomenal growth, 70% year over year. We've got over $50 million of cash in the bank, and we're profitable and on track to grow revenues by more than 65% this year to $300 million. And finally, we've got 7 titles that gross over $1 million. So where are we? We are truly a global company. We've got about 700 employees globally. We've got offices in Vancouver, San Francisco, Austin, Luxembourg, and Beijing and Seoul. Quick note about my talk. So my talk is actually a follow-up to one that Andrew Shepard gave at Casual Connect in Hamburg. And you can actually view that talk on YouTube and casualconnect.org. All right, so what I'm going to talk about today is the mid-core gamer. And the way that I'm going to talk about the mid-core gamer is first framing the opportunity that is the mid-core gamer from a large market size perspective, and then whittling it down to the mid-core gamer inside of the overall market, and then how do you actually reach that mid-core gamer and what do they find valuable. So starting off with the market. So as all of you are, I'm sure, aware, the market is absolutely huge and is going to get even bigger. But what you should know is exactly how big it is and how big it's going to be. So right now, in terms of the digital gaming market, we're looking at a $77 billion market by 2017. That is massive. And in that, we're looking, in driving that $77 billion, we're looking at an 11% CAGR for the next couple years. And within that, tablet is actually the fastest growing segment of that market, growing at about 43%. Smartphone, however, represents the biggest opportunity in overall dollars, and that's growing at about 16% CAGR. And if you think about it, it makes sense, right? People are adopting tablets. However, everybody will eventually have a smartphone, but not everybody will eventually have a tablet. And then in terms of territories, if you break down the territories that are growing the fastest and that will be the largest over the long period of time, or over, the next couple of years, Asia by far will be the biggest market, followed by the US and followed by Europe. And then the rest of the world, however, is going to grow the fastest. And so these are all the regions outside of Asia, US, and Europe, and they're growing at about 20%. So let's take a look at some of the individual aspects of the market itself, right? What is going on inside of the market? So on social networks, it's really not that great. So social networks as a segment within the digital gaming market is the only segment that's forecast to shrink over the next couple of years. And we're looking at about a 6% decline through 2017. Finally, connected consoles. So we all saw the announcement of Xbox One and PS4. Connected consoles are going to grow, and as a share, we're expecting to see virtual goods revenue to grow significantly within that space. And for US and Europe to make up the largest share of the connected console market. And although the majority of revenue will be packaged goods within that, virtual goods are going to evolve to be a very important part of the ecosystem, and that's really exciting. So what are the key takeaways, right? What are the key takeaways from these ideas, from these high-level sort of growth projections? Mobile is not equal to tablet, is not equal to social, is not equal to connected console, right? You have to know your platforms, know your audience on those platforms, and know how big the opportunity is. Understand that the opportunities are different as well. However, within the overall digital gaming market, smartphone and tablets are a massive opportunity. And within that massive opportunity, you have regional breakdowns, right? Asia is not going to be equal to Europe, is not going to be equal to US or rest of world. However, there are unique opportunities within all of those. Global execution opportunity, so the opportunity to have a globally relevant franchise that spans all of these different platforms, all of these different markets, is massive. Yes, sorry. So now moving on to the mid-core gamer specifically, right? And talking about who is the mid-core gamer. When I say mid-core gamer, what does that mean? How big is the market, and how do you reach those individuals? So we've done a number of studies inside of Kabam, and I'm here to share those with you today about exactly how do we determine who the mid-core gamer is and how do we reach them. So the first is a look at just the overall size, the population size by segment and by geo. And so what we're looking at is core gamers they play one or more of the genres listed there, FPS, RPG, fighting, sort of the more core genres. Mid-core gamers are players that play one or more mid-core games and is not core. And casual is likewise plays one of the casual genres, but does not play mid-core genres and does not play core genres. That's one of the interesting takeaways when we looked at this data. Well, there's a couple, right? So core and mid-core are about equal in terms of their overall audience across the world. However, the EU and US is about 50% casual, versus Asia, there's only 22% casual. So that's an interesting takeaway, right? Asia has a decidedly core and mid-core audience relative to the other markets that we're looking at. Next, demographics, right? So what's going on inside of these countries and inside of these segments? Who are these people from a demographic perspective, right? Interesting takeaways, and so there's a lot of data that I'm going to present. I'm not going to talk to every single data point. I'm sure this presentation will be available afterwards, but I am going to point out some very interesting things that we discovered. So age differences are minimal across geos and gamer segments, right? We see a sort of everybody is sort of around the same age when you break it down on an average or a median basis. And that sex differs, however. So like male and female, there are vast differences across geos and across gamer segments. If you look, for example, at the significant difference between core and casual in the US and between core in the US and Asia, we see a significant difference in both sex and in major and sex. On engagement side, so when we took a look at engagement and we look at like where are people playing more, or what segments are playing more, what genres are people playing more across different platforms, we saw some interesting things. So smartphone and tablet, mid-core is the largest increase and the smallest decrease in gameplay time than the other segments. And smartphone and tablet across all segments is of course the fastest growing and the least shrinking. And so what does this mean in terms of making money, right? That's at the end of the day, that's what we care about. And so conversion rates on users to paying users are different across both the segmentation and the geos, right? And so what we see is that mid-core shows the highest regional variability, right? If you look at mid-core, it goes all the way from 8% in the US to 27% in Asia, compared to very small fluctuations in the other gamer segments. And ARPU differs greatly. So like we have 61% of ARPU is driven by in-app purchases right now on the core. However, less than 30% of ARPU is driven by in-app purchases for mid-core and casual. And what does this mean? It means that there's an opportunity inside of mid-core and casual to convert that spending behavior away from the upfront payments to in-app payments. And so I'm going to bring it all together and really talk about what does it mean to be a mid-core user? What do they care about? And how do you reach them? And so first, summarizing the opportunities that I talked about previously. So the opportunities inside of the mid-core segment, inside of smartphone and tablet as a industry within the digital gaming industry is massive, right? The opportunity itself is massive. Mobile and tablet platforms are the obvious winners inside of this industry. Asia is absolutely necessary. If you want to globally maximize the opportunity for a given franchise or title, you need to be in Asia. Mid-core is the hottest target segment. It's got growing engagement, growing spend, and growing audience. And they're growing faster relative to the other segments. And finally, arbitrage will shrink as budgets, build times, and team capabilities increase relative to the market opportunity. And so what that means is today, there is no better day than today to start a game or to start a project going after the global mid-core audience, right? Every single day that progresses, the arbitrage opportunity will shrink. And so how do you target mid-core audience? So first, know your demographics, right? Mid-core is surprisingly evenly split amongst female and male. We've got over 40% females across all regions are playing mid-core games. So that means when you think about creating a mid-core game and you think about going after that, prototypical 30-something-year-old male, you're wrong, right? The global audience is over 40% female. Next, know your attitudinal drivers, right? And so these are also important. So over 30% of mid-core gamers play because friends in real life and in the virtual world are playing with them, right? So it's a social experience. It is not a singular experience. Know your awareness drivers. So the last presentation was very interesting, right? Talking about mobile, social ads, performance marketing. According to our research, less than 10% of mid-core gamers actually find the game that they're playing or the games that they're playing via mobile and social ads, right? They're finding it through other channels that we are not exploring. And lastly, quality matters, right? Greater than 40% of mid-core gamers, where are they finding games if they're not finding them on these ad networks? They're actually finding them from their friends and family, and so that relates to quality, right? A game needs to be really, really good in order for you to recommend it to somebody else. That's actually it. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing real numbers. Any questions?
I think I saw one in the middle somewhere. Sure, I'll repeat it.
The numbers you shared regarding Asia, pretty attractive numbers.
Yes.
Now, the catch about Asia is it's not a very homogeneous market. I mean, you have markets like South Korea, which is over 90% penetration of smartphones. Mm-hmm. And then you have China, which is a little over 10%, India, which is probably around 5%. How do you look at your revenue projections when you look at when you consider the fact that smartphones will be a primary driver to some of these games?
Sorry, could you repeat so what it?
Okay, the fact is,
so
Asia
regions are different, right? Asia's important.
Right.
However,
right.
within Asia, there are many different countries, right?
Right.
And how do you sort of forecast and target those individual countries given
Right.
the smartphone penetration?
Which ones are you seeing as the fastest growing, considering the fact that smartphone penetrations are very, very diverse
Sure, yeah.
across these countries?
So it is a gross generalization to just call Asia, Asia, right? You've got very different markets in the individual countries. So Japan is a very mature market. The smartphone market there for in-app payments for virtual goods is massive, especially relative to the size of the population. And then you've got places like India that are growing exponentially. And so targeting each of those markets is a very different thing, right? And actually the last presenter from Supercell was talking directly to that, right? You need to know your market very specifically. But what I propose here is that you can create a global franchise and you can create a global brand and product that reaches players everywhere. And that targeting the specific segment, you'll have slightly different demographics that will appeal or that will find your product appealing. But you need to figure out how to target them and how to forecast that. So it is a very what we do internally to Kabam is we actually break things down by region and then by country within that region and look very specifically about our penetration relative to the market penetration, and that's how we come up with our forecasts. Yes, in the middle. So there was actually a combination of a bunch of different sources within that. So some of the numbers around like attitudinal drivers and what mid-core gamers care about, that is actually proprietary research that we've done inside of Kabam. And I had to fight very hard to make sure that I could share it with all of you today. And so we're constantly doing research on our user base and on sort of all segments globally. So we also look outside of just the US. And then I also included some market data from various different places. And that's where sort of the forecasting, the blended forecasting model that we've come up with that we're using internally is what I shared with you today. Yes?
Advertisements, and specifically what ad formats are working well for the different app categories?
Sure. So let me clarify. So that was actually a market point, not just a Kabam specific point. So for us, we are 100% free to play. We're 100% in-app purchases. But for the segment of mid-core games in general, that's where only 35% is. And so in terms of what works for them, I'm not sure. Every time and at every company I've ever worked for where we've tested another form, another business model, in-app purchases has always come out as a much higher ROI, a much higher yield on a per user basis. And so we are very much a free-to-play company.
So over here, the question is, for ad revenue, do you have a position on having ad revenue for mid-core products where it's a strategy game or it's a fantasy game or it's kind of a low MAU, high ARPU type of product? There's kind of a thread going around that says that that type of product will be resistant to ad revenue.
So do I have any numbers on like what I just talked about, on specifically ad revenue from inside of the game?
Yeah, resistance from the users to see advertising in those types of products.
No, I don't think it's so much that, so it's not so much that people are resistant to. I think that what we see on an ARPU basis is just the potential for revenue generation of in-app purchases versus ad is such that we tend towards in-app purchases. I don't think it's a matter of people rejecting it. I think it's a matter of just opportunity cost. Anything else? Going once, going twice. Thank you.